In this video, we will go over the MODOT function key assignments that we have set up for our users using the Power Geopack product. Now I know a lot of people have set up their own function keys to do certain commands and so forth, but with the Power product that we have here, these function keys are very useful. So I would suggest leaving those as is, and then if you have function keys that you have set up, I would set those function keys as a different function key, like maybe Shift F1 or Shift F2 and so forth. But I will go through each one of these function keys and what each one of them does, and then you can utilize them if you need to or if you want to. F1, this will activate the MicroStation help. And as you see here, this will bring up the MicroStation help, and then if you need help in MicroStation or Power Geopack, you can utilize the help through here. The F2 key. This will bring up the Geopack Civil Help documentation. And you'll see whenever I click the F2 key, it brings up the Civil Help for doing Geopack help for your civil tools and so forth. Not so much the MicroStation help, but all the civil aspects for the civil AccuDraw and the civil geometry and so forth. So that's what the F2 key will bring up. F3. This will open up the View Attributes dialog. And as you see on the end of your cursor, wherever you have your cursor at, and you hit F3, this will bring up the View Attributes dialog. So if you need to turn something off like instructions or line weights and whatever, this is where you can do that at, versus going through your view commands and activating View Attributes, or going through settings and opening up View Attributes that way. So that's what the F3 does. F4. This will close down all currently active tools and deselects everything in the file. So if I use my element selection tool and I select something and I go through and open up a certain command, maybe like the Place Smart Line tool or whatever tool, and I want to close out of that tool and maybe some other tools that I have currently opened up, I can hit the F4 key, and that will close down all currently active tools and deselects everything. Now the escape key will also do that, but it does not deselect everything. So if I had something selected, now I have a tool opened up, and I want to close down that tool or tools that I have opened up, if I hit the escape key, it will close down those tools that I have opened up, but the elements that I have selected will still stay selected. That is the difference between the F4 key and the escape key. Escape key just closes down the active tools. The F4 key closes down the tools and deselects everything. The F5 key. The F5 key will toggle off or on construction attributes under the View Attributes dialog. So if I open up my View Attributes dialog, and you'll see constructions right here, if I want to toggle that off or on without opening up the View Attributes dialog, all I would need to do is hit the F5 key, and you'll see now that constructions are turned off. If I click on it again, it'll turn them back on. So that's what that will do if you have elements that are on a construction attribute in the DGN file. F6. This is used if you want, let's say we're in a 2D file and you want a 3D representation of this area right here to open up in a second view. This is what the F6 will do. And now you'll see, once it goes through the command, you'll see in view number 1 you'll still have your same view as what you previously had in the 2D, and then over in view number 2 this will be a 3D representation of basically of that view from view 1 over into view 2. So that's what the F6 key does. The F7 key. This will activate the Analyze Point tool under the Terrain Model task, and it will also toggle on Civil AccuDraw, and it will set the Civil AccuDraw to the Station and Offset option. Your Civil AccuDraw, to toggle it on, is this button right here, and the Station and Offset is this one right here. But we're going to use the function key to enable that, or to set it all up in one shot. So if I hit the F7 key, You'll see these are toggled on now, which is Civil AccuDraw and the Station and Offset. And on the end of your cursor here, it's going to say select element to analyze point. What do you want to analyze? What terrain model do you want to analyze? So you would need to select it first. So go ahead and select it. And now if you look, as you move around, you'll see the elevation and slope change to whatever point that you go to. So if I go maybe to, zoom in a little bit here, I go to this intersecting point, you'll see what the elevation is on that point and also what the slope is. If I go to another one, you'll see the elevation and slope there. So that if you hover over top of it, it'll just analyze that point. Now if you come over here and let's say you want to analyze it, but you want to go and see the station and offset also off a certain alignment or a line that's out there, you can do that. And what I have here is just a simple line that I drew from here going this direction. If I want to use that as my alignment, what I can do is on the keyboard hit the letter O. And now what you'll see is this option to select a reference element or reset to return to the previous command. Well, I'm going to use this element as my reference, basically my chain. If you had an established chain that's out there with stationing or with stationing, that works just fine too. So I will go ahead and select it. Now as you move your mouse around, you'll notice that the station will change, but also the offset, it will change depending on where you have your cursor at and depending on which way that line was drawn or that chain was created. So if I come through here and analyze a point now, you'll see that it will give you the station, the offset, elevation, and slope, and everything. So that's what the F7 key does. It analyzes a terrain point and also sets up your Civil AccuDraw, or toggles on your Civil AccuDraw, and changes your AccuDraw option to station and offset. F8. This will activate the Create Template tool underneath the Corridor Modeling task. So if I click on F8, you'll see the Create Template dialog open up. So you can open it up through there, or if you want to go through your task or some of your other tools to open it up, you can do it that way. So that's what the F8 key does. The F9 key. This will activate the Excel to MicroStation tool for importing data from the Quantab Excel sheet. So if you're doing quantities in your Quantab Excel sheet and you want to input that very quickly, you can use this function key, which is F9. So if I hit the F9 key, you get the same dialog box as before to pick point to begin upper left corner of the quantity box. Click on OK. Define where you're going to put it at. Left click to drop it off. And it creates the quantity block. So that's what the F9 key does. The F10 key, along with the F11 key. The F10 key will create a display set of the elements that you have selected within a file. On this file I have some stuff that are selected. This here and these elements right through here. And that's all I want to see. I want to turn everything else off in the file. And these particular elements are on different levels and so forth. But I just want to see those elements in this file, and that's it. Well, what I can do is create what they call a display set. Once I have those elements selected, if I hit the F10 key, you'll see that everything else inside this file is gone. Basically kind of turns it off, kind of like levels where you can turn them off and on. You can also do that with the display set. So now you'll just see the elements that you have selected. So if you need to analyze something, or if you want to look to make sure this is all tying in like you want it to, that's a really good tool to use. So that's what the F10 key does. It creates a display set. Now once you're finished with that and you want to bring everything back to what you had before, we can clear out that display set by clicking on F11. And that will clear out the display set that you previously had. Control F1. What this will do is in your model properties, change your line style scale options from global line style to annotation scale. And also it will toggle on the annotation scale here at the top. Now this only needs to be done on existing files that you get where the annotation is not set. If you're starting a brand new file, you won't have to worry about this. But this just deals with existing files that are not set up for using annotation scale. So if I hit Control F1, and now you'll see here at the top that your annotation scale is turned on. And if I go to my model properties, and I'll right click over the default model and go to properties, you'll see now that my line style scale option is set to annotation scale. That way it'll read the annotation scale that you have set here at the top and size up and down your line styles accordingly. Now for this example here, I know the border that's around this sheet is a 100 scale border, and if I want to check that, I could go back to my reference dialog box, find the border file, and see that it's 100 scale. So if I come in here and change that from full scale to 1 to 100, you should see your line styles show up properly. Now your line styles will show up properly, your cells will size up and down accordingly depending on how the cells were placed. So that's what Control F1 does. It just turns on the annotation scale here at the top, and also changes your model properties from global line style scale that we used to use to the annotation scale. Control F2. This will activate the Saved Views tool. So if I hit Control F2, here's where you can come through here and create saved views if you wish to do that. Basically what a saved view is, if you zoom into a certain area and you like that view for whatever purposes that you need it for, that's where you can save that view and give it a name and so forth. That way if you want to go back to that view without trying to zoom into it and rotate it and doing everything to get it back what you wanted, you can save that view, so the next time you open up this file and someone else zoomed into a certain area and you want to get back to a certain view or certain area of that drawing, that's where you can do that at. So that's what the Control F2 does. It just activates the Save Views tool. Control F3. Control F3 will bring up a tool to exaggerate the terrain model. Of course, this will only work in a 3D model, and this will create a temporary model for viewing purposes only. A good example of doing this is if you had a terrain model that's really flat and maybe you want to see if there's a bust somewhere in that terrain model. This is a tool that you could use this. But like I said, it just does a temporary model to analyze the model being exaggerated to whatever factor that you want. So if I hit Control F3, and you'll get a dialog box saying, noted visual inspection aid only, elevation values will be shifted. Click on OK to that. It'll bring up the tool to exaggerate it. Give it an exaggeration of what you want. This probably ain't a real good model to demonstrate this, but at least you'll get the idea of how it works. I'll exaggerate it by a factor of 5. Once you have that factor determined, hit the exaggerate button. And now down below here you have to identify where you want to exaggerate it from. So I'll just zoom into an area and I'll just dynamically select a intersection point somewhere. And now you'll see that this view is exaggerated by that factor of 5. And you'll also notice in your view 1 right here, it says view 1 3D temporary visualization. Okay, so we're just doing it temporarily right now for visualizing purposes only. If you want to remove that exaggeration, we can remove it. Or if you want to exaggerate it more, maybe by a factor of 10, we'll do the same thing. Click on exaggerate, identify where you want to exaggerate it from, and now you'll notice that everything will be exaggerated from that point by a factor of 10. Now once you close out the tool, just hit the X on that particular tool, it'll bring you back to your normal view where you can start working again. So that's what the Control F3 does. It just exaggerates the terrain model temporarily for viewing purposes only. Shift F1. This will activate the Redraw tool underneath the Survey task. If I go to Task, Civil Tools, Survey, and Redraw, this will activate that tool. This will mainly be used for the people that are in the survey department. So let's say we come in here and we bring in our rec file, and by default the annotation scale is set to 1 to 100, and I want to change that from maybe 1 to 10. And you'll notice there it will change the scale of the text, but if you notice, the text position doesn't really go toward that particular point that was shot in. So the scale of the text goes up or down, but the spacing does not. The redraw tool will allow that to redraw it and get that spacing closer to it if you do change it from an annotation scale of 1 to 100 to something smaller like 1 to 50 or 1 to 10, just like what we did. Or I can use my function key of Shift F1, and you'll see down in the stats bar it's going to go through there and reprocess that data. And now you'll notice that the text for that particular point that was shot in comes back closer. I could still come back and use my civil tools and click the redraw tool. I can do that, or I can hit my Shift F1, which is just a function key, to redraw that text. So that's what the Shift F1 key will allow you to do.